Promissory notes. Act 83, promissory note defined. Section 1. A promissory note is an unconditional promise in writing made by one person to another, signed by the maker, engaging to pay on demand or at a fixed or determinable future time a sum certain in money to or to the order of a specified person or to bearer. Section 2. An instrument in the form of a note payable to maker's order is not a note within the meaning of this section unless and until it is endorsed by the maker. Section 3. A note is not invalid by reason only that it contains also a pledge of collateral security with authority to sell or dispose thereof. Section 4. A note which is, or on the face of it, purports to be both made and payable within the Abu Dhabi global market is an inland note. Any other note is a foreign note. Act 84. Delivery necessary. A promissory note is, in short, and incomplete until delivery thereof to the payee or bearer. Act 85. Joint and several notes. Section 1. A promissory note may be made by two or more makers, and they may be liable thereon jointly, or jointly and severally according to its tenor. 2. Section 2. Where a note runs, I promise to pay, and is signed by two or more persons, it is deemed to be their joint and several note. Act 86. Note payable on demand. Section 1. Where a note payable on demand has been endorsed, it must be presented for payment within a reasonable time of the endorsement. If it be not so presented, the endorser is discharged. Section 2. In determining what is reasonable time, regard shall be had to the nature of the instrument, the usage of trade, and the facts of the particular case. Section 3. Where a note payable on demand is negotiated, it is not deemed to be overdue for the purpose of affecting the holder with defects of title, of which he had no notice, by reason that it appears that a reasonable time for presenting it for payment has elapsed since its issue. Act 87. Presentment of note for payment. Where a promissory note is in the body of it made payable at a particular place, it must be presented for payment at that place in order to render the maker liable. In any other case, presentment for payment is not necessary in order to render the maker liable. Section 2. Presentment for payment is necessary in order to render the endorser of a note liable. Section 3. Where a note is in the body of it made payable at a particular place, presentment at that place is necessary in order to render an endorser liable. But when a place of payment is indicated by way of a memorandum, only presentment at that place is sufficient to render the endorser liable. But a presentment to the maker elsewhere is sufficient in other respects shall also suffice. Section 4. This section is subject to Part 4A, presentment by electronic means. Act 88, liability of maker. The maker of a promissory note, by making it, Section 1, engages that he will pay it according to its tenor. Section 2, is precluded from denying to a holder in due course the existence of the payee and his then capacity to endorse. Act 89, application of Part 2 to notes. Section 1, subject to the provisions in this part, and except as by this section provided, the provisions of this act relating to bills of exchange apply, with the necessary modifications to promissory notes. Section 2, in applying those provisions, the maker of a note shall be deemed to correspond with the acceptor of a bill, and the first endorser of a note shall be deemed to correspond with the drawer of an accepted bill payable to drawer's order. Section 3. The following provisions as to bills do not apply to notes, namely provisions relating to a presentment, A, presentment for acceptance, B, acceptance, C, acceptance super protest, D, bills in a set. Section 4. Where a foreign note is dishonored, protest thereon is unnecessary. Part 4A. Presentment of checks and other instruments by electronic means. Act 89A. Presentment of instruments by electronic means. Section 1. Presentment for payment of an instrument to which this section applies may be affected by provisions of an electronic image of both faces of the instrument, instead of by presenting the physical instrument, if the person to whom presentment is made accepts the presentment as effective. This is subject to rule under subsection 2 and to section 89C. Section 2. The board may, by rules, prescribe circumstances in which subsection 1 does not apply. Section 3. Rules under subsection 2 may in particular prescribe circumstances by reference to A, descriptions of instrument, B, arrangements under which presentment is made, C, descriptions of persons by to whom presentment is made, D, descriptions of persons receiving payment or on whose behalf payment is received. Section 4. Where presentment for payment is made under subsection 1, A, any requirement, I, that the physical instrument must be exhibited, presented, or delivered on or in connection with presentment or payment, including after presentment or payment, or in connection with dishonor for non-payment, or Part 2. As to the day, time, or place on or at which presentment of the physical instrument may be or is to be made. And B, any other requirement which is inconsistent with subsection 1 does not apply. Section 5. Subsection 4 does not affect any requirement as to the latest time for presentment. Section 6. Reference in subsection 4 and 5 to a requirement or to a requirement or prohibition, whether imposed by or under any enactment, by a rule of law, or by the instrument in question. Section 7. Where an instrument is presented for payment under this section, A, any banker providing the electronic image, B, any banker whom it is provided, and C, any banker making payment of the instrument as a result of provisions of the electronic image are subject to the same duties in relation to collection and payment of the instrument as if the physical instrument had been presented. This is subject to any provision made by or under this part.